At 07:39 over northern France, Captain Jack Mercer realized something that made his stomach go cold. The German fighters he was about to fight were supposed to be shooting at bombers, which, according to the plan, were already supposed to be flying without cover. If he had followed his orders, those 4 dozen B-17s below him would now be naked in the sky. His P-51 Mustang hummed steadily at 26,000 feet, thin air, weak sun, condensation trails stretching straight back from his wingtips. Below, the bomber stream crawled east, 48 flying fortresses in tight box formation, silver bodies turning slowly darker as they approached the Ruhr. 10 minutes ago, the plan had said he should leave them. He could still hear the controller's voice from earlier. Blue Leader, orders from Group. After waypoint Charlie, proceed to target area Baker 7. Free hunt. Repeat. Free hunt. Free hunt. The official phrase for what most fighter pilots in the 8th Air Force secretly loved. Break away from the bombers. Use your speed. Go north or south. Cut across the German air routes. Chase and bounce whatever you find. Claims on the board. Victory decals on the nose. You got promoted for that. Jack had acknowledged the order. He had even flown the turn. For 5 long minutes after waypoint, Charlie Blue Squadron had banked away on a course that looked perfect on the briefing map. 16 Mustangs lifting their noses, swinging toward an area of railroad yards and airfields that the intel officer had circled with a piece of chalk at 4 in the morning. He had played along just long enough to make the plotters in England think he was complying. And then the numbers had started screaming in his head. The briefing room smelled of coffee and damp wool when the day had begun. On the bomber side, the intelligence captain had stood in front of a wall map, pointer tapping a neat red line from England to the target and back. Enemy fighter resistance estimated moderate, flak heavy and accurate over target. Escorts will be with you to this point only. The pointer had stopped at a small X labeled Charlie. From there to the Ruhr, the line was bare. The captain had talked about intervals, headings, altitudes. A few gunners had asked about known flak batteries. Someone had cracked a tired joke about how moderate always meant we have no idea. Jack had watched from the back for a minute before moving to the adjoining fighter briefing. Different map, different tone. The operations major had worn a tight little smile. Gentlemen, command wants aggressiveness. The Germans do not fear bombers anymore. They fear you. We have to hit their airfields, their dispersal strips, their fuel points. Today Blue Squadron is off the leash after waypoint Charlie. You will detach, proceed to Baker 7, and destroy targets of opportunity. He had traced a second red line, north of the bomber track. Small circles marked an airfield and a rail hub. You have the fuel, you have the speed, we expect results. In the back row, a young lieutenant had whispered, "About time," to the man next to him. Jack had said nothing. He had done this long enough to recognize the gap between what looked good on the chalkboard and what killed people in the sky. 22 missions gave him a simple picture. Every time escorts left early, the Germans appeared 20 minutes later, right where the charts said the bombers would be alone. He had seen it happen on Mission 12. Back then, he had obeyed. They had turned away as ordered, all righteous about offensive spirit, noses pointed toward an airfield that looked juicy on paper. 13 minutes into their free hunt, the radio had erupted. "Bandits 10 o'clock high. I count at least 30. Where are the little friends? Where the hell are the little friends?" The bomber pilot's voice had been high and flat in his ears, right on the edge of panic. The controller on the ground had sounded just as helpless. "Say position. Say position. All escorts committed. Say position. Static. Half-formed screams. Someone yelling about engines on fire. They had found what was left of that group on the way home. Burning fortresses falling out of the sky. Men bailing out through jagged holes where tail sections had been. Debrief that afternoon had used phrases like acceptable losses and within projections. Jack had gone back to his quarters, sat on his bunk, and stared at his hands for a long time. Acceptable to whom? Now, 10 minutes past Waypoint Charlie, with the same type of mission profile and the same kind of bomb load heading into the same country, he was done pretending the math did not apply. So when the controller repeated the free hunt order, he had taken a breath and said what no one was supposed to say. Control, Blue Leader. Negative on Baker 7. We are maintaining close escort on Bomb Group 039. Threat assessment does not support early detachment. The reply had been fast and hard. Blue Leader, confirm you understand this is a direct order from Group. Control, Blue Leader, confirmed. We will discuss it when we get back. Right now my boys are staying with the bombers. There had been a long pause. Then the cold, careful voice of someone higher up. Blue Leader, your refusal is noted. Execute your mission as you see fit. Out. In his canopy, Jack could see his own eyes reflected faintly in the glass. Brown, tired, older than the 28 years stamped on his records. Blue 2, Blue Leader, he said on squadron frequency. Reset to escort pattern. 2 elements high left, 2 high right. We are a roof, not a spear. Copy. Copy, Blue Leader, Lieutenant Tom Harris replied. Tom's voice had that permanent, hopeful edge of a man with only 6 missions behind him. Just to be clear, sir, does this mean if we survive, I should tell my mother you ruined my shot at ace status? If we survive, you can have her write a strongly worded letter, Jack said. Until then, keep your eyes open. Nervous laughter flickered across the radios and died away quickly. They all knew what this meant. It meant no free hunting. It meant no easy tallies against stragglers and transport planes. It meant riding shotgun on a very big, very obvious target until the last possible moment. It also meant that if he was wrong, he had just thrown away 16 fighters on a phantom threat and given his superiors a neat piece of paper to end his career with. He forced himself to go through the logic again, the way a bomb aimer went through his checklist. German radar had picked up the stream as soon as it crossed the coast. That was a given. Fighter controllers on the other side were tracking headings, speeds, heights. They had files on escort procedures. They knew from experience roughly where American fighters turned away. If he were a German controller, he would call his Jagdgeschwader leader and say one thing. Wait until the little friends leave, then go. He checked his fuel. Plenty for a fight and the ride home. Ammunition full. Engines in the green. The flak in front of the bomb group was starting to thicken. Black bursts at their altitude now instead of distant gray puffs. Inside one of those B-17s, in the left seat of Dakota Queen, Lieutenant Bill Carter squinted up and saw something he had never seen before at this stage of a mission. The sleek shapes of Mustangs were still there. They hung just above and slightly ahead, dark crosses of wings against the pale sky. Usually by now they were already turning away, contrails drifting off on their own path while the bombers pressed on. "You seeing this?" he asked his co-pilot. "Yes, sir. Maybe Group finally forgot how to count." The navigator stuck his head up through the opening to the cockpit. "I am not complaining," he said. "Last time they left us early, we spent 20 minutes explaining to some 109s why we did not want to meet them." Back above, Jack did not take comfort from the small talk he could not hear. He was watching the slice of sky that had haunted his dreams since Mission 12. High 11 o'clock, 10,000 feet above the bomber track, the perfect entry point for a diving attack. For several minutes there was nothing. Empty blue, smudged only by their own exhaust trails and the growing bursts of flak. Doubt crept in at the edges. Maybe Intel had been right this time. Maybe the Germans had shifted their fighters north, toward the very area he was supposed to be hunting in. Maybe right now some other group was getting bounced, and his decision would look like cowardice dressed up as caution. "Blue leader, Blue 4, another pilot said quietly. "Any second thoughts up there, sir?" Jack watched his instruments, then the sky, then his instruments again. "Every second," he answered. "Hold the line." He was about to tell them to check their oxygen when Tom's voice cut in, higher, sharper now. "Blue leader, Blue 2, tally bandits, high 11 o'clock, Angels 29, multiple contrails, they are coming." Jack's neck muscles tightened. He swung his eyes to the sector Tom called out. At first he saw nothing. Then his brain picked up the pattern. Thin white lines against the blue, not straight but converging. At the head of each line, a tiny dark speck. There were more of them every heartbeat. A climbing turn would not fake that. Only one thing did. Fighters. "How many?" Jack asked. "At least 20, Tom said. "No, more. They are stacked in 3 layers. Looks like they are trying to be polite and let us choose which one to die against." Jack felt a cold, precise anger build behind his ribs. "Blue flight, this is Blue leader," he said. "That is our answer. We were right to stay. Listen carefully. We climb as a unit. We do not chase. We break their first pass and stay between them and the bombers. If I hear anyone call a single bandit and disappear 10 miles ahead, I will shoot him myself on the way home." "Understood," came the replies. He eased his throttle forward. The Merlin's note deepened. The Mustang's nose rose. On the German frequency, he caught a burst of chatter. His German was rusty, but good enough. "Da sind sie, Bomberverband voraus. Ich sehe keinen Begleitschutz. Wir gehen rein." "There they are, bomber formation ahead. I do not see escort. We are going in." Jack's jaw clenched. "Control, this is Blue leader," he said under his breath to no one. "You still want to talk about free hunt?" He pressed the transmit switch for his own men instead. "All Blue, commit, climb now." The 16 Mustangs pulled up in unison, a curved line of silver cutting across the bomber's path. The closing geometry sharpened, distances folded in. For a split second, the scene froze in his mind like a photograph. Below, 48 bombers in level flight, black flak smudges walking slowly closer to them. Above and ahead, 3-stepped lines of incoming fighters, lean shapes now, wings and tails visible, diving into attack positions. In the middle, his squadron, the only moving wall between a butcher's bill and the men in those fortresses. This was the moment every chart and doctrine had gambled would not happen after the escorts left. He had refused to gamble. Now he would find out if that decision would save them or destroy him. The first German dropped out of the contrails like a thrown knife. Jack saw him roll out of the white streaks high ahead, wings flashing once in the sunlight, nose already pointed straight at the leading box of bombers. Long, narrow wings, angular tail, a Messerschmitt 109, configured for business. Behind him, 3 staggered lines of fighters slid into shallow dives, the whole formation angling toward the bomber stream with cold purpose. "Blue flight, here they come," Jack said. "Top element, take the highest layer. My element takes the middle. Remember, we are a wall, not a spear. He eased the Mustang's nose up, not yanking, not wasting airspeed, just drawing a climbing line that would intersect the German lead element's path. The Merlin's note deepened from a steady hum into a hard metallic roar. The 109 in his gun sight swelled from a speck into an airplane. The German pilot saw them almost at the same moment. The 109 twitched a few degrees right. Not a panicked yank, just a professional correction that slid his attack aim point from the center of the lead box to the seam between formations. On the secondary receiver, Jack heard him on the Luftwaffe frequency. Verdammt, Mustangs, wir haben doch Begleitschutz. Mustangs, we do have escort. Good, Jack thought. You did not expect us. Now you have to do math under fire. Blue 2, on my right. 3 and 4, stay a little high. Do not dive through the bombers. I want you between them and anything that gets past us. He let the 109 drift down through the ring of his gun sight. 1,100 yards. 1,000. He could start hosing now, but long shots only warned people and emptied belts. He needed the German committed, too far into his dive to break off easily. At 500 yards, he squeezed the trigger. The Mustang shuddered, the nose vibrating as .650 caliber machine guns spat fire. Tracers drew parallel lines in the clear air, then curved gently as gravity and closure speed worked on them. For a heartbeat, it looked like they would pass cleanly under the German. Jack nudged the nose up a hair. The streams walked up the 109's left wing route. Metal peeled back. A dark panel tore away. The Messerschmitt lurched, caught itself, and kept coming. The pilot was good. No wild break. No obvious panic. He was trying to ride his crippled aircraft through the firing cone, to squeeze off a burst at the bombers before he lost control. Jack stayed on the trigger for another second. More rounds punched into the 109's nose and canopy. Something inside flashed briefly. The cockpit erupted outward in a spray of glass and fragments. The fighter rolled onto its back and dropped straight through the front of the formation like a stone, missing the right wing of a B-17 by a distance that made Jack's chest tighten even from above. There was no parachute. "One bandit down," Tom called from Blue 2, breathing quicker now. "Nice work, lead." Jack did not watch the 109 fall. You never watched a kill. You looked for whoever was still coming to kill you. There were plenty. More 109s, and Focke-Wulfs were already breaking into individual attack runs. A line of them was sliding into classic head-on positions, noses pointed at the lead box, wingtips waggling as they trimmed for firing. Others were spreading wide, planning to slam in from high 3 and 9 o'clock. "Blue 3, Blue 4, frontal group is yours," Jack snapped. "Break up their line. Do not let them get a clean pass into those cockpits." "Blue 3 copies," came the answer, voice flat but steady. Jack glanced down. The bombers had seen them too. The lead box was tightening, pilots hauling in the power levers a notch, closing gaps. Top turrets were swinging. Nose guns twitched, searching for targets. The neat rectangles they had drilled over East Anglia were turning into something heavier, denser. Flak was now bursting at their altitude, black puffs that left dirty scars in the sky. One fortress already trailed a thin gray smear from its left outboard engine. Inside Dakota Queen, Bill Carter felt the plane lurch as flak fragments rattled off the skin. "That one was close," his bombardier said over the interphone. "You worry about steel down there," Bill replied. "I will worry about steel up here." He looked up again in time to see a 109 blow, apart, under Mustang fire, tumbling away. For a second, A savage, guilty relief went through him. Without those fighters above, that run would have been straight into the nose of his own box. "Whoever that escort leader is," his co-pilot muttered, "I hope he wins his argument when he gets home." A shape low and right caught Jack's eye. A squat 190 rolled right, dropped under the formation, then leveled off. Short, stocky, radial engine, thick wings, Focke-Wulf 190. Under its wings, Jack saw the telltale blunt tubes of WGR-21 rockets. The German slid out to the side, below the bomber's guns. Perfect setup for a rocket volley. Fire from beyond effective defensive range. Blow open the tight boxes. Let the others cut the pieces apart. Not today. "Blue 2, with me," Jack said. He rolled the Mustang into a steeper dive, dragging Tom along. The altimeter unwound. Wind noise rose. The 190 grew from an outline into a solid, mean-looking machine. The German was focused ahead, on his firing solution. Either he had not seen the Mustangs drop in, or he had decided they would not reach him in time. At 300 yards, Jack fired a short, aimed burst at the 190's right-wing root and the closest rocket tube. The first few rounds sparked off the wing. Then a tracer disappeared straight into the mouth of the loaded tube. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the whole underwing section flashed white. The rocket cooked off in its own launcher. The explosion ate the bottom half of the wing. Fire blew back along the fuselage. The 190 yawed hard, half of it simply gone. For an instant it flew on, a burning asymmetrical thing directly beneath the lead bomber box. "Come on, fall," Jack said under his breath. Gravity obliged. The crippled fighter snapped into a roll and peeled away, disintegrating as it went. A half-cooked rocket shot from the remaining tube in a lazy, tumbling arc and detonated out in space, well behind and below the bombers, a useless, spiteful puff of fire. "Jesus," Tom said. "He almost lit the whole box from underneath." "Almost does not count," Jack replied. "Stay sharp. There will be another one who thinks he is clever." Somewhere behind them, somebody cursed in German and yelled for their rocket section to hold fire until they had a clear lane. Up above, Blue 3 and 4 met the frontal attack. 2 Mustangs leveled into a shallow dive, pointed straight at a row of 109s coming the other way. 4 thin shapes hurtling toward each other at a combined speed that turned closing distance into seconds. At 1,200 yards, both sides opened fire. Bright streams of tracers lanced through the space between them. For a moment, it looked like they were firing straight into each other's gun muzzles. One German blinked. His nose wobbled, his tracers slewing off between the bomber boxes. Blue 3 held, his bursts stitched across the Messerschmitt's radiator and cockpit. The fighter flared into a brief, savage flower of debris and smoke. The other 109 pilot either did not see or did not care about the Mustangs. His nose stayed locked on the fortresses. Blue 4 made the only move that mattered. He lowered his own nose a few inches, put the German's canopy dead in the center of his sight, and held the trigger down. At 200 yards, there was no lead to calculate. Just a line between 2 points and a lot of metal in the way. His rounds went through the 109's engine, pilot, and instrument panel in one ripping stream. The fighter vanished into exploding fragments and a dark blur that the Mustang flew through, pieces bouncing off wing and canopy. "God," Blue 4 gasped. "I almost wore that one." "You wore what was left of him so the forts did not," Jack said. "You did your job." The sky devolved into overlapping fights. Jack's world became a chain of short, hard moments, a Focke-Wulf flashing across his nose at impossible range. A glimpse of a B-17 falling out of formation, one entire wing missing, 6 parachutes already blossoming behind it. A Mustang below him, pulling hard, holes stitched along its tail, still climbing back toward its escort station. He drove his squeezed piece of sky like a tired cop on a bad intersection. Cut off this attack. Spoil that pass. Dive just far enough to break a shooter's aim, and then climb back before the bombers were exposed again. Once, a 109 Dove passed him and raked the side of a fortress before Jack could react. A clean, merciless pass along the fuselage. Smoke burst from the right wing. The bomber lurched, but held. Jack rolled, dropped a few hundred feet, and hosed the German in a high-angle snapshot as he pulled out. The Messerschmitt trailed thick black smoke toward the ground. Inside Dakota Queen, chaos was ordered into short sentences. 12 high, coming in now, the top turret yelled. Hold until they cross our noses, Bill said. Do not shoot our friends. A burst of 50 caliber fire shook the airframe as the top turret cut loose. The tail gunner reported another fighter breaking away, smoking. In the radio room, the operator listened to circuit after circuit. He heard bits of other groups under attack, heard other escort squadrons calling out their own fights. He also heard the calm, clipped voices in Blue Flight as they traded bearings and warnings, not kills. Blue 7, break, 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 3 o'clock high. Blue 3, you have 1 sliding in on your 6, Angels 2, 4. Copy, see him. Jack checked his own tail whenever he had half a second. He was not invincible. The Germans were not stupid. They would take a shot at an escort leader if they could. Twice he saw nothing but empty sky behind him. Once, a shadow moved where it should not. Blue leader, check low 6, Tom called sharply. Jack rolled a bit of wing, looked back, and saw a 190 trying to creep into his blind spot, nose inching up. He did not think. He kicked rudder and yanked. The Mustang snapped into a brake turn that mashed him into the seat, vision narrowing as blood tried to leave his head. Tracers zipped through the air he had just been occupying. The Focke-Wulf flashed across his canopy, overshooting. Your man just missed, Tom, Jack grunted, forcing himself not to black out. Next time, let him know you are watching. Copy, lead, keeping an eye on your ugly tail. For a few seconds, the fight was nothing but angles and reflex. Then a different voice cut through, higher pitched, fraying at the edges. Blue 6, Mayday, Mayday, hit in the engine, oil pressure dropping, temperature in the red. Jack's eyes flicked right and down. Blue 6's Mustang was trailing a thin, ugly stream of smoke. The prop was still turning, but rough. The nose bobbed as the pilot fought it. Blue 6, this is Blue Leader, Jack said. Can you hold altitude? Negative, sir, 6 replied. She is losing power. I can stay up for maybe a minute, then I have to get out. Jack looked at the map in his head. They were still deep over enemy territory. Take what altitude you can west, he said. If you bail with the nose pointed toward home. Do not open your chute at 23,000. They will use you for target practice all the way down. There was a strained laugh. Copy that, lead. I always wanted to see more of the French countryside. A few seconds later, Jack saw the canopy blow off Blue 6's Mustang. A small, dark shape pitched free and tumbled before the chute snapped open, a white dot against the gray. An escort pilot was not just a line of guns. He was also now an intelligence package drifting down into the hands of the people he had just been shooting at. Jack forced himself not to watch the descent. He went back to scanning the edges of the fight. The first wave of Germans was bleeding away. They had come in confident, sure that the bombers were alone. They had found angry Mustangs instead. They had taken losses without getting the easy kills they wanted. Their formations were ragged now, attacks no longer coordinated, but individual lunges. On the far left, 3 109s pulled up and rolled away, diving for the haze along the horizon. On the right, a knot of 190s hesitated, started to form up for another pass, then broke it off when they saw a fresh line of contrails cutting in from 10 o'clock high. "Blue leader, this is Red leader, 293rd, a new voice said in Jack's headset. Younger, amused. "We are sliding in above you to take the next dance. Heard you started without us." Jack looked left and up. Another squadron of Mustangs was dropping into position, lean silhouettes with different squadron flashes, coming in exactly where the escort plan had said they would, just a few minutes later than the chalk lines assumed. "Red leader, blue leader," Jack answered. "You are late enough to make me look very smart. Bomb group is at Angels 2-6, heading 080. Flak moderate, fighters still active but less enthusiastic." "We will cure their enthusiasm," Red leader said. "We have gas and bullets. We will ride the boys all the way in." "Then they are yours," Jack said. He glanced at his fuel. Lower than he liked, workable if they did not get sucked into another wild chase. "Blue flight is low on fuel and short on pride, but we can cover 2 more runs if they get bold before we peel." As red flight poured over them, the remaining German fighters read the same sky. They saw new contrails. They saw fresh enemy fighters at good energy jumping in. They saw their own fuel gauges dropping toward the marks their controllers had lectured them about. One by one, in pairs and threes, they rolled away and dropped out of the fight, thin streaks diving toward their own airfields and debriefings where no one would talk much about the ones that had not come back. The bombers flew on, bruised but whole. Jack made himself count. 1 box, 2, 3, 4. He knew the positions well enough by now to see which silhouettes belonged where. 1 gap where a fortress should have been, maybe 2. Smoke from a wing here, a ragged hole in a tail there. He thought of Mission 12's shattered stream and did the cold math. Today they had lost some men. Without them, they would have lost a lot more. "Blue flight, this is blue leader," he said, feeling the adrenaline slide out of his muscles and leave something heavy behind. "We are handing the bombers to Red and turning for home in 90 seconds. Call out fuel and ammo." The answers came back. "Blue 2, half fuel, 4 guns good. Blue 3, quarter fuel, 2 guns out. Blue 4, fuel in the yellow, holes everywhere but nothing essential." Others chimed in. None of them said what they all knew. They were still alive. 6 was not. "Stay with me until I say break," Jack said. "No victory rolls, no hero climbs. We are expendable, but not that expendable." He eased the Mustang into a wide, conservative turn that kept them close until the last sensible moment. Only when red flight had fully taken their place above the bombers did he let his nose swing farther west. One last time, he looked down at the formation they were leaving. Inside Dakota Queen, Bill Carter watched the escorts bank away and felt something hit him harder than flak. Gratitude and anger at the same time. Gratitude that someone had been there when the Germans came. Anger that it had depended on one captain in one squadron deciding the plan was wrong. He reached for the microphone, then stopped. He did not know their call sign. He had no channel that would reach that specific man, so he did the only thing he could. "Top turret, tell the boys to keep an extra eye on the sky for the next group," he said. "Somebody else may not get that kind of escort." Up above, Jack looked at his own empty six, then at the fuel gauges again. He knew what would be waiting on the ground. Debrief forms, loss charts, claims. Somewhere in that stack, a report about one Mustang pilot who had refused a direct order in the air. He did not know that the intelligence officer would also have a tape on his desk that afternoon. A recording of a German transmission intercepted by a listening post. A voice saying, clear and confident, "Bomber formation ahead. I see no escort. We are going in," followed by confused shouting when Mustangs appeared where no one expected them. Right now, he knew two things. The bombers were still in formation, climbing toward their run instead of breaking apart under unopposed cannon fire. And the line between disobedience and duty was not a line on a map. It was whatever you were willing to live with after the shooting stopped. At 2:17 a.m., 2 days after the raid, the dark gray sky over the English countryside was interrupted by a single light moving across the radar screen at RAF Lakenheath. It was faint, erratic, and not part of any scheduled pattern. Major Robert Harrison sat in the operations room, eyes fixed on the screen. For weeks he had tracked every flight, every squadron returning from bombing missions. This blip was unusual. The room was quiet. Other officers glanced at the screen, then back to their maps and logs. "Anything on the radio?" Harrison asked. The radio operator shook his head. "No chatter. Everything's quiet." Harrison grabbed the headset and keyed the microphone. "Control to Blue Leader. Identify. Over." Static crackled back. Then a voice, calm but urgent. "Blue Leader here, returning after escort. One Mustang down, pilot bail out. Position approximately 7 miles west of the target. Request recovery ops." "Copy, Blue Leader. Rescue team alerted," came the response. Harrison exhaled slowly. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the presence of 2 German aircraft, a Bf-109 and a FW-190, which had landed in a field just hours before. Battered, but intact. They were the first survivors of the attack, and their pilots were quietly being interrogated at a nearby airfield. Among their captors was Flight Lieutenant Alan Sharp, British intelligence. Sharp was sharp-eyed, with a mind honed to pick details others missed. He flipped open his notebook. The situation was unusual. The Germans had failed to capitalize on their initial attack, suffering heavier than expected losses, and the Luftwaffe's usual aggressive tactics seemed restrained. Sharp looked at the men who had just stepped off the Bf-109. One was young, almost boyish, the other older, with flecks of gray at his temple. Reports from other raids told of similar restraint and odd behavior. It didn't fit the narrative of a desperate fighter force throwing everything at the enemy. "Something's odd," Sharp muttered. "These men aren't fighting like they want to win. They are conserving themselves." Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Captain Jack Mercer was already back at his squadron. The debriefing room was cold and formal. The commanders wanted reports, numbers, clear accounts of obedience or disregard. Jack sat stiffly, knowing that what he had done, refusing a direct order, was a line few officers crossed without consequence. The room's atmosphere was thick with judgment and expectation. "Captain Mercer," the commanding officer said flatly, "is it true you disobeyed your orders to leave the bomber stream?" Jack nodded. "Yes, sir. I judged the threat to be too high." There was a silence that felt like an execution. "What about the rules of engagement? The doctrine?" "I followed what I thought was my duty to protect the men below. Losing escort earlier cost us too much on Mission 12. The colonel leaned in. "And now your squadron's fuel is short. How many fighters lost?" None lost. One down on the way back, pilot rescued. The room shifted. The numbers mattered. But you jeopardized your career. Jack did not flinch. I was willing, sir, to take that risk. That night, as the squadron dispersed, Jack's radio crackled again. It was Sharp's voice. Captain Mercer, Flight Lieutenant Alan Sharp here. I want you to know you may have just saved more than just those bombers. Jack leaned toward his radio. We intercepted a transmission before your squadron engaged. A German pilot reported bomber formation ahead. No escort. They were caught off guard. Sharp's voice was steady, but held a hint of something rare. Respect. You changed the plane of this fight. Jack let the words settle. In the months that followed, intelligence reports poured in. Stories from prisoners, decoded messages, and more pilots' accounts unveiled a disturbing reality. Some German pilots, especially among night fighters and in interrogations, confessed they hesitated, confused by unexpected American presence, unsure whether to attack or hold. For a few rare men among the enemy, the war was not a battle of orders and ideology, but a personal struggle between duty and conscience. Jack learned that the line he crossed in the sky was mirrored by many on the ground and in the air, not only in his own squadron, but quietly in enemy ranks as well. The war's outcome hinged not just on bombs and bullets, but on decisions made in seconds, in silence, when duty collided with humanity. Jack Mercer never got an official commendation for his decision. He received no medal. But years later, when survivors from both sides met quietly in reunions and museums, when histories were re-examined as secrets unfolded, his name surfaced with respect. In the frozen pages of declassified files, in tapes of intercepted radio chatter, in the words of men who flew and fought, Jack Mercer's choice stood as a testament. A choice that saved lives. A choice that risked everything. A choice that defined what it meant to be more than just a soldier, to be a protector. And sometimes that made all the difference in the world.